Welcome to my digital portfolio presentation. My first lesson that I introduced to the 7th grade students that I worked with this semester was a student-centered lesson where the students had to create their own word problems. In this unit, students were learning about mixed numbers and had just recently covered fractions, decimals, and percents. My goal of this lesson was to have students create their own problem by working in groups and being creative. This activity helped students conceptually and stimulated higher level thinking. When the students finished their unit on integers, I introduced a cubing activity for students to work on either individually or in groups. This activity was a differentiated approach to learning and reviewing what they had learned about integers. Students were able to work at their own pace, answer problems that they choose to answer in no particular order. They were encouraged to roll the cube and answer the given problem in as many ways as the cube prompts them to. This is imperative in mathematics, as students will begin to understand that there is more than one way to solve a problem. I focused on technology this semester during my observations. I created a digital story using Animoto to introduce students to the concept of ordering and comparing integers. The students loved the video and as a result were highly engaged in the lesson following the video. I created a second video as an introduction to algebraic reasoning. This video focuses on the history of algebra and was made to engage students prior to introducing a unit on algebra. It is important for me as a teacher to be able to provide students with the history of mathematics and how it has changed the world. Being able to introduce this technology would not have been successful if it were not for the colleagues in our PLC groups. Our PLC groups helped us collaborate on lessons throughout the semester and discover new technology and activities that we will be able to introduce to our students in the future. Since my certification level in mathematics is in the middle grades, I was able to focus specifically on my content area. I was able to introduce what was called a mini problem or a warm-up problem to the students I was working with. I made an audio recording of the problem that I taught so that I could focus on questioning strategies. Being able to listen to myself teach and pinpoint certain questions that helped elicit learning among the students was extremely helpful in my growth as a future educator. I picked 3 questions that I wanted to improve on and focus on the whys of the problem. I introduced 2 fraction problems. I allowed students to work individually and then we discussed as a class how to solve for the answer. I wanted to introduce to them how to use fraction models. It is important that students are able to visualize and solve for problems using pictorial demonstrations because it helps establish a conceptual foundation in their ability to learn. One of the official lessons that I taught this semester covered reflections. I used a PowerPoint presentation to show students images of reflected objects that occur in real life. I wanted to point out the line of symmetry, and using these images I was able to engage students in the lesson. While teaching this lesson, I learned a lot about myself as a future educator, and the students specifically have shown me what I need to do to continue to improve myself. This is an attribute that would be cherished among every teacher. I was able to work with students individually while they worked in groups, and I was able to informally assess their learning and understanding of the concept. This is a very important strategy as it helps me gauge whether or not the students understand the material and which students specifically I need to focus on for further understanding. The last lesson that I taught to students this semester was an introduction to Myras. This lesson was mainly a review of reflections and translations. The students were able to use a Myra to place the child on the swing, place an earring on a woman, and place hats on a man or woman and determine the line of symmetry while doing so. They were able to work together or individually, and we used paper savers and dry erase markers so that students may trade with others and share their findings. They discovered the line of symmetry is where the Myra specifically separates the image from the reflected image. At the end of this activity, students were required to journal a response to a given prompt on what they have learned. Students need to be able to voice their learning And journaling is an excellent way for them to reflect on their own progress individually.